Welcome back to the Everything is Black and White podcast. It's time for the view from the opposition. And this week it comes from Scott Trotter, a football writer for the Mirror. Scott, a regular contributor to the podcast every time we talk about this Saturday's opponents, that being Chelsea. Scott, welcome back to the podcast. You well?
Yes, very well. Thank you, Andrew. How are you doing? Merry Christmas.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you. I'm wearing a nice festive Christmas jumper. Clearly you didn't get the memo.
No. It's too much work to do before Christmas Day still.
Yes, because I have nothing to do at all. But I do, because all the games are coming thick and fast, and we are here to talk about the visit of Chelsea to St James's Park. Very quick turnaround for both sides. Chelsea beating Cardiff in the League Cup a day before Newcastle beat Fulham in the same competition. I guess that's where we'll start. It is a very quick turnaround. Not exactly fair, is it?
No, I think I saw somebody point out not that many teams playing midweek this week, and Newcastle and Chelsea lumbered with the early kickoff on Saturday. But yeah, I guess Chelsea can't have too many complaints with the extra rest, even with the travel up to the northeast.
Given that Chelsea, am I right in thinking, made 11 changes to the side that faced Cardiff? So they've got the depth, right?
Yeah, they like a swap of players between matches, whether it be Carabao Cup, Champions League. It's been a regular feature since Enzo Maresca joined the club last year, and not necessarily the same strength of players in between those two sides, but I think they should be ready to take on Newcastle this weekend. Really,
yeah, not many of the big hitters were in that start 11. Casado, though, amount of money he cost, he was in it, so it wasn't exactly a second string side, so to speak. They can't have too many complaints, I think, about the turnaround because, like I say, not many of their big stars did play on Tuesday. Even Newcastle, meanwhile, pretty much played the strongest side that they could do, decimated by injuries, and the quick turnaround might impact them a little bit more. And I guess that's something Maresca will be looking to take advantage of.
Yeah, I think so. I think, Chelsea got the win the other night, but they've been through a little bit of a problematic phase for themselves, not really picked up too many points, and the win against Everton last weekend was really big for them to kind of start to turn things around. And I think, they will want to continue that momentum against Newcastle. And, I think Maresca's got a little bit of a reputation of having these sort of iffy moments halfway through the season, with Chelsea last year a little bit and with Leicester before that, struggled to get, like I say, maintain momentum for the second half in some respects. So yeah, they'll be looking for any advantage they can get this weekend to take advantage of.
Is the fact that many people tip Chelsea to be title contenders this season, and if we're being brutally honest, they may be fourth in the Premier League, but they are a little bit off the pace. Is that increasing the pressure on the manager?
It's a funny one. I think with Chelsea, there's almost a bit of an identity crisis of what they are meant to be doing this season. I don't think there's any necessary pressure from the club that they should be challenging immediately win the Premier League, but also they did just win the Club World Cup in the summer, kind of slaughtering PSG, who for many were the best team in Europe last year. I think from a Chelsea perspective and sort of the club's hierarchy, there's more of a assess them at the end of the season, see how things have progressed a year on. But they did qualify for the Champions League. You want to see progress, and after you've qualified for the Champions League, progress tends to be competing for that Premier League title. They've got a good result against Arsenal already this season, but they are quite a few points behind them at the top end of the table. So it is a bit weird. I think Maresca, in terms of fans, some elements of them support him. Some, have a lot of questions about what he's done, and it's really hard to assess whether Chelsea are doing well at the minute or not. I think things like they've maybe got the second best defence in the Premier League at the minute. I don't think it's anything spectacular, but also it's kind of vulnerable. That's maybe where you point out a weakness of Chelsea. They do have mistakes in their back line at times. And yeah, it's a really difficult one to read for them at the minute. And I guess maybe something we might touch on a little bit, Maresca saying that he hadn't felt any support last weekend. Didn't really make clear who that was targeted at. Some think the hierarchy, some maybe suggesting the fans. It's a weird one. And yeah, really difficult to read. So maybe there is some pressure there. Otherwise, maybe you don't come out with comments like that just before the January transfer window. Yeah,
I was going to say, everyone had questions about who he was kind of aiming those comments at, and no one still knows exactly who they were for. And I guess that does, on one hand, put extra pressure on him, to get the results. Because if you're making those comments, regardless of who they're aimed at, you've still got to turn up and do your job. I mean, where did those comments come from? Was it in terms of the form hasn't been great and something's maybe just kind of snapped behind the scenes?
Yeah, so I think that's what a lot of people were a bit caught aback by, was the timing. So they came, I can't remember if it was 3 defeats in a row, but they slipped up against the likes of Atalanta, games they were expected to win. And then, they beat Everton, a game they should probably win. I think Everton have a pretty dreadful record at Stamford Bridge, and it seemed a calculated move of sorts. And then, like you say, it just left more questions than answers. He was pushed on it ahead of Cardiff again. He didn't really say who it was aimed at. He did say he had a good relationship with the owners. But yeah, I think not really clarifying who it was aimed at, maybe saving them some critique, but also it opens it up to the owners to think, oh, is he talking about us? What can we do about that? But then the fans against Cardiff sang his name, which hasn't happened on too many occasions this season. So maybe they liked it was targeted at the owners. I don't really know. It's certainly a weird moment for Chelsea, I think.
Certainly so. And coming to St James's Park probably isn't the best fixture for them, some would argue, if indeed he is under pressure, well, whether it's self-imposed or not. Chelsea at St James's Park have a dreadful record of late. You've got to go back to October 2021 for the last victory for Chelsea on Tyneside. And we've seen in recent games Newcastle United perform really well against them. Newcastle's home form this season has been the saving grace to what otherwise has been a bit of a disappointing campaign so far. If I was Newcastle United, I'd be fancying myself on Saturday, to be honest.
Yeah, I think understandably so. As you say, Chelsea have struggled against Newcastle, and particularly that, I think we always tend to speak about it on here, that upper Matam style that Newcastle do deliver at the best. They put teams under pressure, and that is where Chelsea have been exposed. And I think certainly, in the 4-1 there, inexperience showed. I think Reece James got a red card despite maybe being captain on that day. I think Chelsea maybe have developed since that moment, but there's no denying that this will or should be a tough test for them. And it'll be a real kind of telling moment of maybe how far Chelsea have come at being able to take on a team like Newcastle, rather than necessarily just, being able to put out a good performance against an Arsenal or somebody like that.
You mentioned there the style of Newcastle United. Eddie Howe's talked about how they're trying to change into something different. But on Saturday, my hope is that Chelsea will turn up and try and take the game to Newcastle and allow Newcastle to absorb, hit on the counter, while at the same time also pressing high intensity. Is that the way you see it going?
Yeah, I think Maresca and Chelsea, they will want to dominate possession. They will want to play out. They will, I guess, do everything that everybody comes to expect of them. Maybe there'll be, minute detail changes depending on who ends up playing. But that's what they've done. I think, maybe at times earlier in the season, we've seen them struggle against set pieces, long balls, things that perhaps Newcastle can take advantage of. I'm thinking of that Liverpool game that Newcastle had earlier in the season. That was just a barrage of long balls at times. Maybe that's somewhere Newcastle will be able to get some joy against Chelsea. I think Chelsea have been thankful to get Wesley Fofana on the pitch and have some minutes. I think he's been able to deal with those things a little bit better than some of the other backline options. But that will prove a test, I think. Essentially, Chelsea being able to maintain composure against stiff backlines, deep backlines, especially going into the second half. I think one of the Atalanta players came out and said that they kind of identified Chelsea dropping off, after 60, 70 minutes, maybe running out of energy, seeing some substitutes come on. That's where they really identified as an opportunity to take on Chelsea and really get a result. And of course they did. And I think that'll be really interesting to watch again, because Chelsea have been, managing the minutes of some players, likes of Cole Palmer. He's back, massive boost, but I think he came off before 60 minutes against Everton. So, there are going to be moments in the game where perhaps momentum can change.
I guess Maresca will also be looking at Newcastle United's injury crisis at the back. Tino Livramento looks like he's going to be out for a little while. Lewis Hall could be back on Saturday, although he has suffered a minor hamstring injury. So we'll get some updates from Eddie Howe hopefully on Friday morning, but we won't know for sure until the team news drops. But given that Newcastle do have a bit of a problem at the back with a lack of options at centre-back, only Malik Chow and Fabian Schär, they're the only fit defenders at this moment in time. I mean, that's set up for Chelsea to take advantage, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, especially because a lot of Chelsea sort of, I don't know, it's a better performance, but the end product of late has been the likes of Pedro Neto. Alejandro Garnacho got on the score sheet midweek. I know his transfer wasn't particularly popular with a lot of fans, but he is somebody who will attack and will look to create something or produce a goal. And I think players like that, if you have maybe a fullback who isn't used to playing there, the likes of, I think, did Lewis Miley play last night? That is going to be an area they will look to attack because, I think it's all well and good being able to defend there and do a job. But when you play against the top players, they will look to take advantage of those small areas where what could make the difference.
Indeed. And I think what could play into Chelsea's hands ever so slightly, that if Lewis Miley does have to play at right back, which it is looking like he will have to, you're going to want your wingers and your centre midfielders to be doing some extra defensive work, which might mean they're kind of tied up in that rather than looking forward and looking ahead and trying to, actually do what they do best, getting the ball in the box and being threatening. But that being said, Newcastle United did see a goal for Yoane Wissa on Wednesday evening, a tap-in, but they all count. First of many to come, hopefully. Again, we don't know who's going to start up front. Is the second start in a matter of days for Wissa too much for him? That being said, Nick Voldemare has looked like he needs more than just one game out. Let's say Wissa does start. Actually, let's not. Let's ask you, Scott. Who do you think Chelsea would rather perform against, rather try and stop? Would it be Voldemare or would it be Wissa?
It's an interesting one. And I just wonder maybe with some of the mistakes that have been in this Chelsea backline at times or in the team in general, does somebody like Wissa, who maybe is a bit more prepared to nip at the heels, maybe he has that kind of hard-working aspect to him that we saw so often at Brentford. Could that prompt a mistake, maybe? I think that's one element. Obviously, Walter Made provides a bit more of a physical battle. Maybe, the likes of Chalobah and Fofana might be a bit more prepared for something like that or a bit more in the norm. But I think with Walter Made, he's such a, I guess, unique player to line up against. Maybe they don't have the experience of coming up against a player like him. Obviously, the classic good touch for a big man. It's not the usual when you come up with against a physical presence. So yeah, maybe Wissa would just add that extra element of danger. But I think, there's reasons to be concerned about both those guys.
And into the midfield, it's always a key battle area. Bruno Guimaraes is having his best season for me since he joined Newcastle United. He's been excellent. Tonali has been off the pace in recent games, but a brief cameo in the game against Fulham in the Cup, he looked like the Tonali of old. Then it's a flip of a coin who starts there. Ideally, it would be Miley, but it's not going to be. So it's probably going to be Jacob Ramsey. This game might come too soon for Joe Linton. I guess that will be a boost for Chelsea because, Joe Linton in these games when Newcastle don't have the ball and they've got to do a lot of running, a lot of chasing down the opposition, it's perfect for him. But everything that Eddie Howe said suggests that unless it's an emergency, and they were his words, Joe Linton probably won't be seen from the start for a little while.
Yeah, and I think what I was kind of saying earlier about that, maybe Chelsea having a drop off in the second half. So if you had somebody like Joe Linton, I guess even he could come off the bench, getting himself around the pitch, disrupting, and I think, that sort of, I guess this is there with Bruno Guimaraes, but that sort of tension that comes with an Enzo Fernandez from Argentina, there's an opportunity for some cards to be shown, I think, in the middle. Caicedo, obviously no stranger to a card either. I think there will be, a battle for dominance in that area. I think that's probably why Newcastle have had so much success in recent seasons at St James's Park against Chelsea. But Chelsea's midfield has been strong, and if they can play Caicedo there, they obviously have also seen the likes of Reece James in the middle of the park playing well as well. But I think if Newcastle were at full strength in the middle, that would be something they look to take advantage of. Maresca has a lot of faith in James in midfield, but I think maybe against one of the best midfields in the league, that would be a difficult task. Whereas this maybe just leaves that room open for Chelsea to have a little bit more freedom, maybe a little bit more creativity, and maybe a little bit more success. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Bruno versus any Argentinian is always fascinating, but I always enjoy him going up against Fernandez. It's always an interesting watch, to say the least. Just a reminder, ladies and gents, this episode is sponsored by NordVPN. It's the perfect thing to have on your electronic devices if you're browsing public Wi-Fi. You can get a discount offer by clicking the link in the podcast description box. 1 subscription, 10 devices. So keep yourself safe and you support the podcast at the same time. And we're also sponsored by fpro.com, the trainer mat you need to help improve your footballing skills. You can get up to 60% off using the code EIBW20 or heading over to fpro.com/EIBW20. Trainer mat can fit pretty much in any space in the house, even works outdoors. You have drills built by UEFA coaches to help improve your skills. So do click the link and head on over. We mentioned there, Scott, a few Newcastle United players. I mean, who's the one you think Maresca will be particularly fearing?
I think, as you said, with his form this season, it has to be Bruno Guimaraes. I think purely for not just how much he can, put himself about and challenge the likes of Enzo Fernandez, but that creativity he is offering at the moment is certainly a danger. And maybe if he can push himself up the pitch, he can really force some pressure onto that back line, along with, I guess, whether it be Waldemade or Wissa. I think it is hard to look past him at the moment.
And what about the main weakness that you think Newcastle will be exploiting? You kind of referenced one earlier in the show, but if we go into a little bit more detail for our viewers.
Yeah, I think, maybe this back line that Chelsea will be able to play. I think, Marc Cucurella has transformed his Chelsea career and is probably one of the first names on the team sheets these days. I think whether it be Gusto or James at right back, that's pretty strong. And then Chalobah and Fofana in the centre. I think a lot of Chelsea fans will be confident. I think maybe if Tosin was to come in, that would be an area of weakness that's, pretty well acknowledged now in the supporter base, but he played against Cardiff, so I imagine it'll be the backline we expect. But there have been mistakes, and, Chelsea, again, perhaps easing off after the hour mark and half opens, that whole team up to maybe more errors, a bit more pressure on the back line. And that is somewhere Newcastle maybe should look to attack if they can put pressure on those defenders, on those midfielders, particularly in the second half. Obviously, you want to do it all the way throughout the match, but I think they've struggled to maintain momentum when maybe bringing players on or not quite knowing when to make the change to bring players on. Sometimes Maresca's waited a little bit too long. But I think there will be a moment. Palmer's probably going to start, but he probably will come off early. And I think, it's impossible not to get a little bit of a lift when somebody like that goes off the field because they are so talented. I think there will be moments like that where, Newcastle's fans can get G'd up and it can maybe turn the tide, even though Chelsea might be dominating possession.
Final question then, Scott. Give me a score prediction.
It's a little bit hard to look past history at the minute, but I do think Chelsea maybe are a little bit of a better team, maybe have slightly better standards now. And I think I'll go 1-1.
If you offered me 1-1 now, I think I would take it. Although I'm feeling more confident than perhaps I usually would do. Simply because Newcastle United, when the odds are against them, and they are against them here with all these injuries at the back, it's when they seem to do all right. They've got that tendency to really upset the odds. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory for Newcastle United. And hopefully they can pick up that win and continue the momentum that they're on, because they need it after the Time Weird Derby or the Weird Time Derby, and going into a busy Christmas fixture list. A win against Chelsea would certainly set them on the right path. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 victory. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be a bit feisty in the middle, and I'm intrigued to see if a 12:30 kickoff has any impact both on the atmosphere and indeed the players as well. Big thanks to Scott for popping on and providing the insight into Chelsea. Big thanks to you guys for watching and listening. Enjoy the game. If you're going, head over to chroniclelive.co.uk for all the latest Newcastle United news, and I'll see you guys very soon.